All right, ladies and gents, today we're doing something from home. I'm going to show you all the places I like to fish at Prado, whether it's shore or in the kayak. So let's see what we can find out. All right, well, here is an overview of Prado Lake, and I was able to find a view from when they drained it, which is going to help because it can show a lot of the topography that is still there under the water, which helps some of these fish stack up in certain places. As I go through in my kayak with my fish finder, I can see a lot of the structure that's under here. So just to orient yourself, over here is the main gate. If you can see the mouse right there, this is Euclid, and then over here at the far bottom is the spillway. So we'll start. Oh yeah, let's start over here because that's the far west end of the lake. So there you can see, here's the main gate, here's that first parking lot. In this area where you got a bunch of cement structure right here. This area is actually a very good place to fish, either from shore or the kayak. If you look up here right now, there's a bunch of reeds all in this area. And there's a sign right here and a bench. You can see right there, I don't know if you can see the sign. But if you go right about here, it's hard to see on this picture, but there's a hump in the water right about here. So most of this area right here is about 8 feet deep, except for this hump. Right around in here, it gets to only about 4 feet. And what happens is a lot of the fish will stack up around this little piece of structure here. So I've seen guys do really good from over here, throwing this way, and if you get right around this bench area and throw parallel to these reeds right here, this is a good spot usually to go. Also now there's a whole bunch of reeds all the way through here that have grown up. The trout tend to hang out in this area too, all along here at certain times of the year. Now as it gets warmer, like it is now, they may start moving out to deeper water because the water's got to start warming up. Because I think yesterday it was out here in Chino Hills, it was 85, I think, was the high, which is super warm for this time of year. But this lake is not very deep. The deepest point, I think, is about 16 feet. Most of the lake is between 4 and 8 feet deep. So that doesn't bode very well for trout, especially when there's a lot of extreme water temperature changes. So if I'm fishing shore, I'll work anywhere in here up to this point is good. Even around this corner right here isn't too bad. Zoom out a little bit. And then in here, it's hard to access from shore. There's some fishing on this point. This point is decent. As you can see, there's a little drop off. This gets down to about 12 feet right in here, which is the deepest part of this side of the lake. But as you can see, there's a nice point right here, and the fish will stack up right in here as well. But this place is real hit and miss. Sometimes I'll set up my kayak in this little cove. I'll get hit right away. Sometimes I'll get nothing. Now if we're moving down here to orient yourself, here's the boat dock and the little bathrooms, I guess a little cafe that used to be there. Now if you go down into this cove, I don't do a whole lot of business down in here. It gets pretty shallow. Most of this is probably 3 or 4 foot deep, all right in here. If you wanted to catch some big carp maybe, because I know they have some monster carp, so if you want to do that for fun, this is where I would start. It's nice and shallow. It's a good place for them to feed. The rest of this bank right here on this point is decent for trout. The trout will come in here for sure, especially after they stock. They'll kind of float in here and float down this way. But this is a good area. Right up here, up to the bait house is decent. I've seen guys do real good right off this, right at the limit where you can't fish anymore. If you throw it out in here, I guess it's just because of this drop off right here, which is, I mean, granted, this is only probably about 11 feet, but it goes down deep pretty quick. So that's why I think the trout tend to hang out right here. Now over here, there's a lot of dips and valleys all in this cove, which is good because, you know, your fish will stack up at certain times on certain shelves. So if you're in a kayak, I like to get on this point, and I'll throw back this way and back this way. There's a couple humps up here. It gets to where it's only 3 or 4 feet deep. I'll position myself just off of those and throw to those humps. And lots of times the trout will be on top of them, depending, of course, on the weather. This area is pretty deep. It's about 12 feet. I don't have a lot of luck in this cove. I see guys catch, you know, fish every now and then in here. I've caught some decent catfish in here. But as far as the trout, once you get into this cove, I don't tend to do a lot, just about on this hump and over here. Other than that, I don't really get a whole lot of action in this area. If we move down here, here's the boat dock, or the launch ramp. This is where they stock the trout. Lots of guys like to get in this area. This area, honestly, is not that great. Sometimes if you're there on Thursday, you obviously have a better chance of hooking up, but I call this area the highway, or the super highway. There's no structure in here, and basically the trout just move back and forth between this one and this one over here. So you can hook up, but you're just getting transitory trout, and a lot of the trout just getting packs and crews. But the days that I've spent a significant amount of time on here, I get 1 or 2 maybe on a good day, or nothing. So I tend to stay away from this bank right here, unless it's the day of the stock. If you got your kids, it's cool to let them watch the fish go in the water, and then as the fish spread out, you will definitely get hit in that area, but that's only if you go on Thursdays. Now if we move down, this point right here is my absolute favorite place to fish if I'm shore fishing. If I'm kayak fishing, there's usually almost always someone here. If I'm kayak fishing, I'll stay away from it, because to get close enough, I'd be interfering with those that were on the shore, so I tend to stay away. But if I zoom in right here, you can see this is where they're doing construction, using construction equipment. But this trough right here is still here. So what you do is throw out. It's about, this looks a little bit further. It's only about 30 feet out. Maybe they dug some of this out before they filled it back in with water, but there's a trough right in this area. And I've caught some decent fish there. I've seen some people catch some really nice fish right in here. For some reason, the bigger fish like to hang out right in here. Now you got this cove that comes up to the road. Years ago, the pump used to circulate water in here, and this place was outstanding because they had a pump shooting water out underwater in this way, and it caused a big current that would circulate, and the trout would love to sit around here. In fact, yeah, you can see a pipe right here. But this one's, I don't know if that's an intake or an outtake. But anyway, it doesn't seem like that's the case anymore. Every time I go over there, I don't notice any current. Like, this was in the 80s and 90s, and when they were doing that, the current was noticeable. You could see clearly there's water coming in, fresh water. So unfortunately, I don't think they run the pumps that much, and if they do, I think they do it in the middle of the night, because I've been looking for areas where trout would stack up, because obviously, as you know, trout love fresh, cool water that's moving. But no luck finding that so far in the past couple seasons, and maybe that's why they don't do that, because they know guys like me would figure that out, and we could have a field day if we found out where that was. So this cove isn't bad. This whole area, you can see how flat it is. This is about 5 feet deep, the whole dang cove. And it doesn't go out anywhere till about in this area. It starts to get about 6 to 8 feet, right about in here. This point right here is another place I like to go. that's real good. I mean, basically any of your points are decent. For whatever reason, the trout, when they cruise, they'll hang out on these points for a little while. So if I'm shore fishing, I always try to go out on a point. Always, always. And most of the topography that you can see in this picture is pretty accurate from the readings I was getting on my depth finder. Like over here, it's not deep at all, probably about 5 feet, and there's no structures, there's no dips or valleys, nothing. And like I said, this little cove here is very shallow. Catfish and carp maybe in the summer, if that's what you're into. I don't ever do a whole lot of business on this shoreline here in the kayak or on shore. Also, a lot of this is real overgrown with reeds now. Now, getting to the deep part of the lake, which is all right in here, this gets up to about 16 feet. Or 14 to 16, I should say. It depends, I guess, on the day and how the fish finder's reading. But this is the deep water. In the summer, when you see me doing these catfishing videos, this is usually where I'm sitting in my kayak, is right about in here. And it's about 14 to 16 feet of water. And the cats usually stack up in this cooler water because since the lake is not that deep, as you know, it gets hot out in Chino in the summer, and the fish try to stay cool, even the catfish, so they're in the deepest part of the lake usually. Something interesting I found is here's an intake crate. So I know, obviously, they pump the water. They have to circulate this water somehow or another. So that's got to be intake. On the depth finder, all of this area, let me move that so you can see it better. All of this area is probably 6 to 8 feet. Except right around in here, it drops off to about 14. Right where this grate is. Now, they must have some kind of pump going because I always see fish, not necessarily trout, but I'll always see a group of fish stacked up at various depths near this depression of this valley. I didn't know the grate was here. So that leads me to believe that they move some water at certain times of the day or night, and that's why the fish are just hanging out around here. That being said, there's a spot right here on the shore where there's some dead trees, and there's a wide open area for shore fishing that you cast straight out, and you're in that hole. And surprisingly, not a lot of people fish there. Maybe it's because the walk's far. But I have sat here in my kayak, and I've some of my older videos, it showed I've lost some pretty big fish. I think they were big catfish. I was trying to bring in on a trout rod, but you never know. I have hooked into some decent fish and broke them off, unfortunately, right here when I was sitting in the kayak. And you can reach it from shore, no problem. This is only about 30 feet off. Now, my favorite spot to fish in most of my videos, here's the spillway right here. I'm usually sitting right about in here somewhere. So I could throw back to this depression. There's also another valley right in here where most of this water is 4 to 6 feet. Then it'll go near 10 feet. Then it'll go back up here about 5 to 6. And then again down to probably about 12 or 14 where this grade is. So there's a lot of dips and valleys all in this area. If you're in a kayak, anywhere around the spillway is good. This whole area, there's a lot of potential for moving water, especially if the wind kicks up, which I think that's why a lot of the trout hang out here. Also, there's lots of places for them to hide. There's lots of structure, or not really structure, but dips and valleys in the terrain here. And it's real diverse. So I always, if I'm not catching anything in other parts of the lake, I always come here, and 90% of the time I get something. For shore fishing, anywhere on these corners, and throw out to the middle. Both of these corners right here. It's super steep, so if you have trouble walking or got bad knees or something, I wouldn't recommend this area because it is Easy to fall in. I mean, you're not going to drown. It's only a couple feet of water, but you're not going to have a good time for sure if you fall in. Moving down this way, there's a couple little cutouts for shore fishing. The first two are where I'll go if I'm on shore and I can't get this corner. I won't even fish down here. I never have any luck throwing out into this area if I'm going for trout. Now right here on these rocks, what this does, you can't see it in the picture, it goes almost straight down to the deep area. So like, let's say this is the deepest area right here, like 14 to 16 feet. It dives. So all this water is deep, very deep. So it's good if you like to fish for channel cats. This is where you would go. As the weather is warming up like it is now, we get into middle of March. If things keep like this, I'm going to start more fishing in the kayak in this area because the trout are going to start moving deep to get that cooler water with a little more oxygen in it. And this is where they're going to start to concentrate before they start to get sick, and the birds will just start picking them off. But one honorable mention. For fun, there's a nice walkway that goes down this spillway, and there's a nice pond down here, and usually it goes into a little stream or whatever. You can catch some decent fish in this pond if it's full. Many times I've seen guys catch trout down here because the trout, if the water gets going during the rain, they'll flop right down this thing and end up in this pool. I've caught bass down here. I've caught catfish down here. I've caught carp down here. I personally haven't caught a trout, but I have seen people catch trout. So if you're bored, the fish aren't biting, and you're in this area, it's worth walking down here just for fun. Take some light line, a small rod. At least you can catch some nice sized sunfish or small bass. So they're there. I'm trying to think of anywhere else I might go. No, that's about it. I mean, this is actually a very good look at the bottom of the lake because it according to my depth finder, it looks very similar to this day. But as you can see, there's not much to it. Because of that, there's not a lot of places for the trout to stay. So I always try, if I'm not getting bit in a half hour, an hour, I try to move a little bit, try and find where the fish are. They'll usually hold there for a while, so you get maybe one or two fish, and the fish will move on. But they come back sometimes. So a lot of the trout in this lake are very transitory. They are always on the move. Some will stack up, but for the most part, those that are experienced fishing here and you're fishing from the shore, you'll see people start to hook up down from you, and then eventually your rods will start going. It's like they move in a pack, and as they look for food and go about their day. So hope this helps. I know I get a lot of questions about it. I'm not keeping any spot secret at all. My whole thing is hope we catch more fish all together, and you guys teach me plenty too with your comments. So that's the whole reason I started this, just to share information and so I can get some information too. So till next time, remember to leave a comment if you got anything to add. Absolutely like and subscribe, and tight lines. We'll see you.